Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. And no, I'm not doing Doctor Who like I said I was going to do yesterday. I'm going to do number 243, which of course is Spider-Man Homecoming. I'll show it to you just to prove that I did 243 Spider-Man Homecoming. That's what I failed to show you yesterday when it was selected, I think. God, it's all a blur. I'm doing this today rather than Saturday because as it was the last time we had Doctor Who, and yeah, I realize I've done Doctor Who before, but this is a new Doctor, and I kind of feel it's a new era, and I feel like it needs to be addressed, needs to be taken notice of, and we'll do that tomorrow. So, unfortunately, because just like last time, they kind of lean towards UK times and then East Coast times. Normally, when something premieres on Disney Plus, it's like at midnight or something on the West Coast, where I am, of the United States. In this case, it shows up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, and that's usually after I've already posted. And I got things to do Friday night. Yeah. Watch cartoons with children. Just the way it goes. Star Wars cartoons, but yeah, still, Either way, I'm going to talk to you about Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm really glad we got this one, the first of the three Tom Holland Spider-Man films in the series. So, hooray. We're doing them hopefully in order. Maybe we'll get the next one at some point in order. But this is from 2017. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes long. And it doesn't feel long enough. And it also feels like there's so much going on, but it still gets wrapped up. It's kind of hard to be disappointed by something that leaves you full and wanting more. This is, to a lot of people, this seemed like a culture shock because they were still hurting over the loss of Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. They wanted him to be Spider-Man forever, but you can't have a young Spider-Man in his 40s or beyond. He was going to get replaced at some point. And then you have Andrew Garfield, who, as whether you love or hate, most people hate Amazing Spider-Man 2, he kind of got the short end of the stick when technically Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, is meant to be his Empire Strikes Back. And never got to resolve that storyline when the deal was made between Sony and Marvel Studios, this up-and-coming Marvel Studios that was just knocking it out of the park, movie after movie after movie. If Marvel hadn't been doing so good on its own, I don't think Sony would have said, yeah, you know what, maybe we should pair off. But at the same time, their Spider-Man movies were coming back with lesser and lesser good returns, box office returns. So this kind of marriage was inevitable, but thank God they stuck with it because there was so many times they seemed to threaten that, oh, we'll take Spidey back now and put him in his own thing. No. A lot of times I feel like it was just a threat to make us talk about it more and give them free press. Usually what it is, but this is Spider-Man's first full film in the MCU, following Captain America: Civil War, where he made his first appearance. The kind of great thing about this is that we don't get the normal first Spider-Man movie. We've done the Uncle Ben thing over and over again with two previous sets of Spider-Men. None of that's there. We already have a kid who's already Spider-Man, and he's a kid. Yeah, he's 15. He's young. If they had put our Andrew Garfield into this, standing alongside Captain America and Iron Man and everything else, he appears tall to me. I haven't stood next to him, but he's tall and he's lanky, and he would have looked like maybe not the same age as everybody else in the Civil War. He would have been just not the scrappy kid who was out of his league. So it was kind of inevitable they were going to have to recast, just sort of start fresh, and that's where Tom Holland comes in, and he breathes new life into this. Nothing against Andrew. I love Andrew. I love Toby. But in order to make this very much about a new start with the MCU, they had to cut away a lot of the what came before, and that makes sense to me. So hopefully it makes sense to you, to you as well. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, we get Tom Holland, already Spider-Man, Peter Parker, already Spider-Man. We get a mention that he was bitten by a spider. We don't see it. We don't see him, fighting Crusher Creel, chasing down his uncle's killer. None of that. Because as we'll find out in future films, minor spoilers, there was no need for that. There was no reason for that. It turns out that Peter Parker was just raised by an amazing woman in the first place. That, maybe they might have struggles here and there, but yeah. Peter does make a mention that Aunt May has gone through a lot, but we don't know what that is. And again, I'm not going to spoil things for later films. We'll talk about those at another time. But May just, beyond being just astoundingly hot, and everybody is hitting on her for that very reason, it's Marissa Tomei. So what are you going to do? Come on. My cousin Vinny. What are you going to do? There's every place they go in public, whether it's the Thai food restaurant or Tony himself, they're always hitting on her. So, the guy at the bodega also asking Peter about his aunt. So yeah, the hot Italian lady. Oh, speaking of which, there's so many little hints towards future films. And yeah, sure, Marissa Tomei is Italian, but Peter in school, during a certain montage where he's sort of stepped away from the Spider-Manning, he decides to, throw himself into his studies. At one point, he's learning Italian. Guess what? Next film, he goes to Italy. He goes to Venice. So, yeah, there's little forward ties. I should bring up my thing. Even though I know this cast pretty well, and this battery is almost dead. I always forget to charge it. I still like to have this as a reference. So, what do we get in this film other than a really good... they spent a lot of time with Peter, and that's great because Tom Holland is electric, for lack of a better word that I just came up out of the top of my head, as Peter Parker. He's likable. He is self-effacing. He's just, you'll like spending time with him. And he comes through, even when he's wearing the suit. You see Peter Parker come through in that, which is rare. It's difficult because one of the struggles you have with Tobey Maguire is way back when is that they really wanted, they wanted to be Spider-Man as much as possible. Of course you do. It's a Spider-Man movie. It's not called Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. It's called Spider-Man or The Amazing Spider-Man. You're gonna want to spend as much time behind the mask as much as possible, except for the final act, in the final battle, where he has to pull off his mask so the actor can act and not just have a stunt double do all the stuff for him, and just record his lines later. You see this with any full face mask thing. It's Iron Man. Anybody who has a full face mask always has to pull their mask off in the final act, the final battle. That's the way it always happens, and that's what we get here as well. But what we get with Tom Holland here is he comes through the mask regardless of it. His just awkwardness is it glows. So we get him going, what are you going to do? This is like the 4th, 5th, 6th Spider-Man film. We get 3 Tobys, 2 Andrews, 6th Spider-Man big box office film. What are you going to do that's new? Villain-wise, they've already had Venom, 2 Goblins, Dr. Octopus, then Electro, and a hint at the Black Cat in Spider-Man 2, Felicity Jones. We had what was it? Was the first one? We even had the Rhino for a bit. What are you gonna do? Oh, you're gonna throw the Vulture in there? Really? The Vulture? That old guy in a skin tight outfit, green outfit, and flappy wings with the feathery ruffles around his neck, as he was, and still is to a certain degree depicted as in the comics. Well, you're gonna age him down. You're gonna have Michael Keaton play him, who is just terrifying when he wants to be, when he's not Beetlejuice or even Birdman, which again he's a Birdman in this one in a sense, in a mechanical suit. You give him a real motivation. You get things that roll out of the MCU. Yes, this is a Sony film set in the MCU, but this rolls out of things that happened all the way back to the Avengers film. And I just forgot. It feels like a million years since I've seen this. I forgot so many elements. Yeah, the Staten Island ferry scene, which was in the trailers ad nauseum, that immediately comes back the moment you see that scene starting. There's plenty of amazing shots with the Vulture and stuff flying around, but I forgot about him just being in the suburbs at a party and then realizing he has no buildings to swing off of and having to run across all these yards, do a Ferris Bueller, and they reference Ferris Bueller. Yeah, it's Ferris Bueller actually appears. The film actually appears in one of the scenes. It's kind of fantastic. Yeah, and of course they're chock full of other guest stars. Captain America shows up in a bunch of special videos aimed at teenagers. We get lots of new cast members that are teachers. Hannibal Buress. We get Martin Starr. We get there's so many great comedic actors peppered throughout this, and it's fun. We get a love interest in Liz Allen, played by who is she? She's very pretty. Where are you, Liz Allen? Laura Harrier. And we get a new Flash Thompson, who doesn't look or sound anything like the big blonde Teutonic bully that we have seen in other things. Or, he wasn't necessarily blonde in the Tobey Maguire ones, or is it Tony or was it Andrew? Either way. Yeah, the Tobey ones. Tony Revolori plays him, and he's just a jerk. So that's all you really need to have in Flash Thompson. Today's bullies aren't necessarily big, tough, muscly guys. They're just, I don't want to say the word, but they're just awful to the person that they're cutting down. We get Donald Glover in actually a much more important role as time goes on. Speaking of those other references that go forward into, make references to things that are to come that we just don't realize, Donald Glover is really important. Because there's for a time, he was always thought of as going to be, he'll be Miles Morales. He's a bit old for that. By the way, he's also Childish Gambino, that is his music alter ego. And he's also in Community, you know him. But he plays a character called Aaron Davis. Now, those of you who read the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, you know who Aaron Davis is. Yeah. He's the Prowler. He's the uncle of Miles Morales. And who did we see in the second across the universe, across the multiverse, Spider-Verse film? The live action character? Who did we see? Oh, it was Donald. So, yeah, dressed as the Prowler. And Miles is in this. So, yeah, it's just, there's just so much cross-pollination stuff that they knew, of course, well before we ever knew it. So I imagine Donald Glover's going to play a larger part someday, point down the road. Of course, we get introduced to Zendaya, who is just sort of this snarky background character that just keeps reappearing throughout this. She seems like comic relief, and she's popular. She's a Disney kid. She's been in plenty of Disney shows over the years. And she doesn't look like her normal, just standard cute girl thing. She's kind of rebellious looking. She's not all made up. But Michelle is her name. And they don't give us her nickname that her friends call her, MJ, until the very end of the film. And so we get an idea that she's going to be pretty important going forward, not just comic relief. So yeah, beyond the villain, which we get in the Vulture, I know I'm jumping around a lot, I'm sorry. We get the Shocker, we get the Scorpion, even though not a full Scorpion outfit. You have to understand, Spider-Man has a very large rogues gallery that is not made up of goblins or symbiotes. So there's a lot of villains, and then half of them are being made into movies where the bad guys are the star. I'm going to ask you. Well, I mean, sure, the Madam Web film wasn't necessarily bad guys. It was just to say, hey, we're going to put girls in spider costumes, and let's do spin-offs. If anybody had seen that film and liked it, those films might be happening. I get the feeling that they're not. Kraven's on the way? Maybe, eventually. Is it one of those films that they're going to just just sort of shelve and just say, oh, we're going to write that off on our taxes? We don't know. It was due to come out in October last year. Will it come out in October this year? Who knows? Anyway, we get so many villains in this, almost a sinister syndicate, almost maybe a what's the other one? Sinister Six. Yeah, Sinister Six. But yeah, we don't have the other standard members of that. So yeah, after so many like high level villains, we get some of the second stringers, but that doesn't mean that the Vulture is not in any way like pushover. It's Michael Keaton playing a mechanically inclined, overpowered Vulture from pieces cobbled together from battles that the Avengers have had around the globe. Pieces of the Chitauri weapons. We get pieces of Ultron. We get Tony stockpiling a ton of arc reactors. Yeah. And he's the Vulture. He scoops up all that leftover stuff and resells it for a profit. It's perfect. It's perfect. So yeah, we get great actors. We get great villains. Despite the fact that we don't spend a ton of time with the villains, we spend a ton of time with Peter and his struggles. And when, again, it's been out for a while and everybody wanted to see this, has probably seen it. I don't know why you would watch me, 8 years later or whatever, how many years later, 7 years later, before deciding to watch this. Maybe you just care about my opinion. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, we get a lot of villains we wouldn't have expected to be that cool. Bokeem Woodbine plays, for a time, for part of the film anyway, the Shocker, which is literally visually, sorry, Ramita Sr. and, why can't I say his name? Oh my god, the guy who created Spider-Man. Beyond Stan Lee. Yes, Stan Lee. Why can't I say his name? I'm just tired. It's a shame. I can see the name, but I can't say it. Anyway, I'll say it at the most inappropriate time in the middle of the night as I sleep. So, the Shocker is one of the more lame looking. Spider-Man accuses him of dressing in a quilt most of the time. But that Shocker gauntlet is pretty hardcore. It's pretty rough. So we get sort of a much more Peter Parker focused film, but there's no lack of Spider-Man. anytime the Spider-Man's on screen, it's worth it. It's he goes through his struggles. There is a moment where he disappoints just about everybody, and of course he gets a chewing out from his dad, Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., of course, who makes multiple appearances through this. He also gets yelled at by his uncle, who is Jon Favreau, playing Happy Hogan, and he also gets chewed out by his mom, really his aunt, Marissa Tomei, as Aunt May. So yeah, it's the Parker luck. It's the Parker not so great of a life. His Spider-Man life isn't going too well. He wants to be an Avenger. Nobody's calling him back. So he's learning his place in the world, and that's what this film is all about. We're far from home. It deals with his identity and dealing with his bigger place in the world. Each one of these kind of ratchets up, and then it gets multiversal eventually by the third film. So it's I have a feeling that now that they've sort of finished this big arc, they might come back in the fourth film. They're already working on it, and I have a feeling that at some point Michael Keaton's going to get a call. He's already had that call. Michael Keaton's coming back at some point. There's a mid-credit sequence that cannot be ignored, even though it's been many years now. It's been 7 years now. It cannot be ignored. The things that happen in this film are going to come back to bite Spider-Man, not in the radioactive superpower way. And of course, Donald Glover, I have no doubt that we're going to see him again as somebody much more visually interesting looking, costume-wise. So I can't recommend this film enough. It's especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. Little kids can enjoy it, adults can enjoy it. There's so much solid comedy for the adults, understanding what it's like growing up and disappointing everybody, the awkwardness of being in love with the hottest girl in school and having her completely not be in love with you, but sort of also having that Lois Lane Superman kind of thing where she won't look at Clark Kent, but man, Superman's awesome. You get that with Liz. So there is a million things that I have forgotten since I started talking, which is probably to your benefit, because I could probably go on forever. But yeah. Jennifer Connelly is the voice of Karen. I knew I recognized her voice. I didn't realize that Jennifer Connelly, Karen is the voice of Spider-Man's suit. So yeah. Spoiler. At one point he gets a voice in his suit. And again, there's so many things I forgot about this film. It was refreshing to watch again after so many years. I've watched the one with Doctor Strange, the third one, so many times. I've gone back to the theater to watch it when they re-released it a few months ago, or late last year. It was totally worth it. Please take some time to watch this trilogy. Just go through this trilogy. And I think you're going to find all of them are a lot of fun, mainly because of the cast, mainly because of the pacing, the writing, and the fantastic villains. Which, yeah, you got to have that. And not that Spider-Man films have had a lack of fantastic villains. It's just tonally, sometimes they weren't perfectly off. They're always working towards the big set piece, a big effects set piece. And I will say the only thing that kind of annoyed me is there's a lot of obvious scenes where, like, Peter and Tony are talking to each other on top of a building. They're obviously on a set. The background is not real. It's green screen. It's going to be that's the way it is. They're not going to shoot it in New York City. They filmed this in Atlanta. One of them is the hotel that literally downtown on Peachtree, one of the hotels where they have Dragon Con every year, which is also the TVA from Loki. It's all these things. It's the same place because they film so many of that stuff in Atlanta. So yeah, I've talked way too much about this, but yeah, I think 1 minute probably could have told you, watch this film, but 25, sure. That's what I'm here for, just to babble my head off. So tomorrow, for real, when I get time, I'm going to be watching the new first episode of Doctor Who with a brand new doctor. Did we count the... Oh, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I don't know the numbering now, just because when What's-His-Face came back last December, does that make him the 14th Doctor? And this is the 15th? We'll figure it out tomorrow. Doctor Who. Brand new season. Premiering on Disney Plus tomorrow. On the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow.